following complaints by African citizens about the racial discrimination they faced as they attempted to flee war-torn Ukraine to neighboring countries. The Nigerian embassies in Poland, Romania, and Hungary have moved swiftly to evacuate Nigerians stranded at Ukrainian borders. According to reports, the missions have provided buses to move Nigerians from the borders to the capital cities of Warsaw, Bucharest, and Budapest, where they're being fed and provided with accommodation. The Nigerian government has also designated airpeace and airmarks as the airlines that will today start airlifting our citizens from Romania, Hungary, and Poland who want to be evacuated. Now joining us from Bucharest to give us more insight into what the Nigerian government is doing to help our citizens fleeing the war in Ukraine is Ambassador Safiya Ahmed Nuhu, Nigeria's head of mission in Romania. Good morning, Ambassador Nuhu, and thank you for joining us.
Okay, good morning.
Well, thank you very much, Your Excellency. Could you give us an update?
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yes, could you give us an update? Because Romania, we were told, is the main hub that the Nigerian government is using to evacuate stranded Nigerians in Ukraine and in that part of the world. What level of support are you getting from home? What challenges are you facing? And what is the situation so far, today being the first day for evacuation?
Okay, so yeah, indeed, Romania is one of the major entry points to most of the refugees. We started receiving people coming into Romanian borders, the 4 borders that were opened since Friday. And we have had many numbers of Nigerians come in very large groups and batches. One thing that has been helpful is that there's a very organized and coordinated way from the Romanian authorities in which they have designated points of helping the people, addressing challenges of documents and what have you. So within the border of Romania, the processes are somewhat easy. And the provisions that they made early and well ahead of time made it possible for many to cross over to us. So regarding the support from Nigeria, it's one of the most helpful things as well, because we got a confirmation and support that every Nigerian crossing onto the border should be given absolute assistance. So the Romanians at the entry points were providing also food and emergency need, including even accommodation. But because the evacuation is scheduled to hold here in Bucharest, the capital city, we were putting them in buses of about 30s and 40s, thereabout up to 50, and transporting them over to Bucharest for the purpose of the evacuation. I don't know whether I'm frozen or...
No, we can hear you. Do carry on.
Okay. So the evacuation so far is scheduled to start the preparations. The airlines will take off today, and we will have every detail ready, and we'll have our about 560 are initially scheduled to be transported back to Nigeria by morning tomorrow.
Well, this is comforting.
So far, yeah.
It's comforting to know. Thank you for sharing that.
It is indeed, especially for us, because we keep getting more that are here. We've had more than 1,000 people come into Romania from the various border points. And many of them are here, sheltered here in Bucharest. For those that are at the border points, there are those that are already in buses and are to be brought here to us in Bucharest.
my question is that there were reports in the last couple of days that 2 Nigerians have died at the Ukrainian border. There was no mention of Romania, but Ukrainian border, that could be anywhere, really. Are you aware of any deaths, if I could finish? Because there has been confirmed reports that an Indian medical student has been killed in the shelling in Ukraine. So what advice do you have now for Nigerians who remain in Ukraine that are trying to make their way to the Romanian border?
So really, most of the difficulties are within the Ukrainian borders. And no official communication of any deaths has been brought to us. I mean, there are these rumors that are circulating, but no such official communication. And in particular, we took an interest in getting feedback from those that are coming onto the Romanian borders. And most of the issues and discrimination or any feeling of, most of the difficulties are before they cross over to the Romanian borders. So in Ukraine, because of the tense situation, it's conflict comes with chaos and a lot of distortions of normal processes and. But for us, principally, I know that the Romanian authorities has been writing to us on a daily basis, asking of our feedback and what they can do to improve their procedures or assist missions. And for example, knowing that the Nigerian mission has a lot of people coming in, we got a specific communication that came asking us what assistance and designating officers from the immigration that can even help and give us support.
Okay, I'd like to ask you, what's the turnaround time of processing Nigerians stuck at that border with Romania? And I'd ask this because some Nigerians that I monitored that got in there on Saturday evening, it took well over 12 hours before they got processed.
Okay, so it would in certain points. There's a particular border between that's the major border point that many people were coming from. That is the Siret-Suceava border. So the people that were coming in through that border were many. In fact, as at Saturday, we got informed by the authorities that there was about a 15-kilometer queue in the Ukrainian border before you cross over. That's because, in Ukraine, they're also trying to see to it that it's not just, the screening process, because 18-year-old men are not usually allowed. So the processes in Ukraine are quite rigorous. So that can take a lot of time. But for those that came in through the other borders that I made available, the time is not so much. And they often tend to report to us that they got even better facilities or better treatment. Because at the Siret-Suceava border, at some point, there was absolutely no accommodation, no hotels were available because there were so many people. At some point, we had to be receiving here in Bucharest from the Suceava border about 4 buses getting off at the same time coming to us. So at some point, there were no buses, even if you want to have them. So those are some of the challenges, and it actually does depend on the border point. But at some point, the authorities advertised that we should start redirecting people that are coming into Romania. We should be redirecting them to the other borders so that there will be spread out rather than a congestion at that particular border.
Well, Ambassador Nuhu, when the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyema, met with the House of Representatives, he made a point that there are some Nigerians out there in the war zone in Ukraine who do not want to leave. They would rather stay back. They are not part of this evacuation process. What information do you have in this regard? Why is it that some of them don't want to be evacuated? They want to stay. Is it that they have dual nationality and would like to fight in that war? What do we know?
So I wouldn't want to talk about the reasons they would have, because I'm sure those would be very personal reasons. But one thing that I do know is that most of the Nigerians that we have in Ukraine are students. And any student crossing, to another country is seeking for the quality of education, and so they still would want to have an opportunity for that within the region. However, I would feel that the best person to discuss this with would be the ambassador of Nigeria to Ukraine, because I know he's been in touch and base with the Ukrainian population. Nigerian, of course, now there's a lot of disruption, but there'll be a lot more information that will unfold, because there's always a lot of lack of clarity of situations during an emergency phase such as this one. So I'm sure by next week we'll have a lot more information to work with.
Well, speaking of unfolding information, is there more clarity with regards to numbers? Because we've heard figures from 4,500 and 635,000 to 10,000 Nigerians in Ukraine. Do you know? Because you've been clear about how many you've processed, how many you're sending for evacuation, but do you know how many you might still be expecting?
So there are projections and projected figures. It has not been possible for most of the missions in Europe to have all the specifics on in respect of the documentation of our citizens in the countries. There are challenges that we have to work with, but what I can say is that this situation would also allow for us to have better figures, because the mission here, we have, since the start of the conflict, been receiving emails with numbers, names, and details of people that are coming to us. So that would make it better for us to have the records of our citizens that have come in here. For example, in Romania, I see that as being an asset. And I think it will be better to be more of a coordinated and organized group of Nigerians for the various missions here. So I'm sure whatever figures we have from Ukraine would be a projected figure or an estimate, and would not be the precise figure as with other countries that can have specific figures of their nationals in the country.
Okay, so two questions. I'd like to know about the plight of Nigerian students in the northern region of Ukraine called Sumy. Because when we interviewed some of them yesterday, just let me land, please. When we interviewed some of them yesterday, they said their school gave them assurances to stay back, that it's not going to be as intense in other parts as regards to war with them in Sumy. I mean, what is their plight currently, since the Russians are still pounding Ukraine real hard? And secondly, the evacuation starts today in Bucharest, but I know that some other Nigerians have gone to Hungary and they have gone to Poland. And most of the Nigerians I followed through this process, the recurring decimal was a problem of money. In fact, we had to raise money for some of them to get to the Romanian border in the first place. How are they going to do it? Now that they're cash-strapped, they can't get money out. How are they going to do it? How are we going to move those Nigerians from probably Poland or Hungary down to Bucharest? How's that logistic going to work?
Okay, so I'll start with the first question regarding the plight of the students in Sumy. And I would say the information that's available to me is just the information that you've basically shared about, the people, the students that are trapped there. I know for sure that there are plans on the way, but I'm not the right person to communicate those plans to save or evacuate them. because I mean there would be other more suitable people to talk about what's to be done in respect of those. But I can, of course, talk about those that are under my area of responsibility. And in terms of the evacuation, the second question, the plans that are on ground at present is that there's not just going to be an evacuation in Bucharest, but also there will be one in Hungary and there will be another in Poland as well. So it's like the planes are going to be deployed to the various places that we have Nigerians ready to depart.
Okay, Ambassador Nuhu, I mean, you are out there in that zone. Russia and Ukraine, they started talks yesterday. Do you have any hopes that any progress will be made with those talks and that this nightmare will be over soon? What's your reading of the situation? What advice are you giving the Home Office?
So the question actually made me smile. It's very difficult to predict what can happen, considering what has happened. We know there's been a lot of predictions that okay, this conflict, but the way that it actually started took a lot of us unawares. So whereas we keep our hopes that a truce, some form of a truce, can be reached, we would have to just keep our fingers crossed that it will happen, but no one can give any guarantees at present regarding what can happen.
I want to go back to advisories, given that Nigeria clearly dropped the ball with regards to advisories to leave town. Now that this situation has escalated to the point that it has, are there been specific advice, such as what the US is telling its people to take 2 days worth of food if they're going to the Ukrainian border because of those really lengthy processing times and the risk of actually being stranded with nothing to eat? Are there like practical nuts and bolts, pieces of advice given to Nigerians who are trying to make it to the border?
Actually, there have been frequent, daily updates that's released by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that provide guidelines on what it's doing in respect of all of the borders. And our websites as well have been, we've been updating information, including WhatsApp platforms and social media platforms that are created. So, those have been the means of providing advisories. But for most of the missions, I know internally, when we have the students, or rather, the Nigerians coming in, we designate a person that coordinates the group, because usually they come in groups, and where we are hosting and accommodating them, there will be someone that would be the person coordinated. So we share information with them on every development, especially because we've been getting a lot of communication from the host authorities. So we use that platform to also communicate with the people here.
Okay, so Ambassador, please confirm for me. That means there are going to be Nigerian planes landing in Budapest, Warsaw, and Bucharest.
Yes, that's the plan.
What is going to be the schedule of these planes, number one? Secondly, are we going to have something on ground to help the students? Because when they get into Nigeria, some of them will obviously be stranded. They'll be coming in with no money at all. I assume, correct me if I'm wrong, that most of the plane will land back in probably in Lagos and Abuja. So what happens to the last leg of their onward journey? 2 questions.
So as I told you, the plans are still being put in place. And I know that a lot will be clearer by the time the evacuation is going to happen. And we've been having briefing meetings twice a day to fine tune all of the arrangements. That will be better communicated through the ministries of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs regarding what the schedule is going to be. And what we know here is that there's going to be a 560 flight that will take our refugees back to Nigeria by morning of tomorrow.
Okay, Ambassador Nuhu, who is bearing the cost of this evacuation activity? Is it the Romanian government or the Nigerian government? And do you have the necessary resources to be able to process all of this? Where is the money coming from?
Well, the federal government has chartered the flights that will come and do the evacuation.
Yeah, but initial cost in terms of transportation from one point to the other, accommodation, logistics, and all of that. Has the embassy been financially empowered, or you are just dipping into your, existing resources to be able to process?
As I said earlier, one of the first instructions that was given, and amazingly, it wasn't just about even being able to assist Nigerians. When this thing started, it was very abrupt, and the numbers that started coming were so unprecedented. And Nigerians were coming in groups with some of their colleagues, friends in the university from maybe other African countries. So the instruction was that if they come, we offer consular services, because here in Romania, there are a few African missions. So we actually got them all together, brought them here, and for some, we've been able to offer those, and the instructions were clear, help them out, and all resources were made available for us to be able to do this.
Okay, thank you very much, Your Excellency, Ambassador Nuhu. We wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.